to Retail Chats. Here we talk about our experiences. Sometimes we go out to see, feel, and touch. And on good days, we try on. But today, as promised, we are talking about my experiences, my personal experiences with the brand that I used to work with, which is CNA. The last days of CNA. My name is Nolu Tando, but you can call me Nolu. I have over plus minus 19 years in retail. I worked in retail plus minus 19 years, but for this specific brand, I worked for 16 and some months, and a couple of months. And so today I'm focusing on CNA, particularly CNA 2020 to 2022, because that's where that's where life changed, if I can put it that way. I started off at CNA in 2006 as and I joined their graduate program. Started off there as a training manager during the training, and then moved on to sales manager, sales supervisor, depending on the store size, but I was in a medium store. So, and then I moved on. As soon as I've completed my training, I moved on and I became a store admin manager in what they categorized as a small store, small to medium store as well, because that was bigger than 400 square meters. So I was there for about 3 years or more, and then I moved on to a flagship store where I joined the risk, again in admin, but I focused more on risk. I was a risk manager there. And soon after that, because we were at that time, the store closed briefly for relocation, and so I moved on to another store that was vacant, and I put up my hand to oversee that store up until they were comfortable enough to advertise the positions, and I was one of the candidates that had applied, and I got the job. And then from there on, I moved on to the store that I was moved to, because that wasn't my choice actually, but that's another chat. So I moved on to the store that I ended up, and I finished off my journey with CNA. I'm seasoned in the retail industry when it comes to stores, and I've done it all. Obviously, I was young, but the thing is, it was a big group. It was a big group. CNA was under Edcon Group. As much as I was applying externally, when I didn't get the job, it wasn't a train smash for me, because we were under Edcon, which is the biggest group. It was the biggest group at that time, retail group in South Africa. So I always knew that if there's an opportunity that comes up internally, I would apply. Externally, it was hard to transition from stationery and books. For some reason, I kind of understood when some actors complain about being typecast, which I didn't understand in the retail scenario perspective, because yes, I'm managing. You're looking for a manager, you're looking for a department manager, a departmental manager, or whatever kind of manager. Of course, every time they rejected me because I only knew, according to them, I only knew stationery and books. That told me that then their training and upskilling, they lacked that ability to train and upskill a person. Because what do you mean you want? Because even if a person is coming from, a cashier is coming from another brand to join another store, they still need to, as much as they've been a cashier, they know how to count, they know how to deal with customers, they still need to learn your software. They still need to learn how the way you do things in store. They still need to embrace the culture. So it always shocked me when it came back and said, no, oh sorry, we're getting a pushback from the senior management, or you may lack experience, of which I didn't, because again, I worked for Edgar's, for the biggest store. I worked for a good 2 years in a flagship store, so I knew my way around clothing. But then also, like I said, it wasn't a big deal for me, because it's like, your loss, because I had a job and I was good at my job. And like I gave you a brief history now of where I was and how I moved, I could still move internally. So it wasn't a matter of I'm looking for a job because I'm desperate, but I needed change. I was itching for change. And of course, after being a store manager, what else can you do? Because there's only like a handful of regional managers in the region, and those people were waiting for their retirement. So you needed to move, so that I needed to move to, to expand my CV and my experience as well. But it didn't happen. And like I said, internally, that will be another chat on its own. So anyway, it was all good and well. Yes, the business over time had, so let's say in the last 4 years of, let's say in the last 5 years before 2020, there had been changes, but it wasn't major changes that would cripple us at store level. It affected other people, but because of the kind of people that we were, and the way that the group at the beginning, when they employed every team member, they made sure in terms of training, they were good at training and change management. So every change that came, we already knew that every financial year there will be a restructure happening that goes as far as regional managers. However, in big stores, like in flagship stores, it also affected the structure of that store. But in terms of stores, it didn't really affect them to a point where they had to make a decision to take that position or leave. There was always something. There was always something to accommodate those people, right? So it's Feb 2020. We get an email that's inviting us, management, to for a conference call. At a certain time, we take the call. We've been sold. CNA has been sold. Not a problem, because we also, like I said, we're under Edcon. Edcon is mainly a clothing retailer. So we were always the little brand that sells something completely different, which was stationery and books, stationery, books and toys and technology. So that was a relief that we have been sold. And for us, the news meant that finally we will get an owner, a boss. Whoever is buying us has a mission, as a goal, to take the brand, to make the brand achieve more and better and than we were doing, and to solely focus on the brand. It was a great deal for us. Cool. But let me just go for context. Let me take you back to our annual conference, which usually happened in Johannesburg. That always had been all of us combined at group level as the Edcon group. Jet Edgar's, legit, boardmans, when boardmans were still around, all of us. First day of the conference would be us all in under one roof, where this group CEO would give us, feedback and update on the group's financials, performance, all of that, and changes in strategy. And then day two would be individual chains doing the similar agenda as the previous day, however, now focusing on the specific chain, right? But now this 2020, September 2019 conference was different. It was just us. It was just CNA. Again, it wasn't a bad thing. And we arrived and we stayed at the Retail Academy. Not a bad thing for me, especially because that is exactly where we spent our 6 months in Johannesburg in 2006, and I met great people there. The company was embarking on a cost-saving initiative that year, so it made sense that we use company resources than outsourcing venues. We did the conference again, changes. Our head of operations had left, so they were announcing a replacement, and the replacement was someone that was previously a regional manager. Great for us, because finally there's now opportunities for growth. They didn't take someone from outside. Great for the business, because I can assure you that was a cost saving, was money savings of salary from taking someone that was original and to promoting them into head of ops, where instead of taking an external candidate that is well experienced in that role. It didn't matter, because the person knew the job, knew the brand, lived and breathed the brand. And because they managed stores, for us it was a relief, because it's someone that understood what we were going through. So they're gonna fight for us. Yay. We finish, and then obviously we get our presentation to go present back to stores, the strategy, the goals, and we continue with festive. Look, going back to work wasn't a big deal. I still remember half of us were still busy with stock takes, or some of us were in the middle of stock take prep. So we got back immediately. It's business as usual. We do our stock takes, we complete our stock takes, we start getting ready for festive, for the festive season. Again, here, obviously, new boss, new rules, new, they would do things to, to make us feel their presence. It didn't bother us that there was so much activities that suddenly we had to do while we're busy preparing for festive season, like this operation clean the stockroom. There was another term for it, I can't remember, but essentially it meant that we had to take every single item that is in the stockroom and make sure that it's displayed on the floor. Obviously, we know that. You are retailers. We know that you cannot have things in the stockroom that are not on the floor. Was it not fair? It was definitely fair, because there were people that were still doing that they didn't do regular checks in their stockroom and make sure the replenishment goes properly. And that probably also affected the replenishment of the items, because people were saying items are sold out while the items are in the stockroom, right? That was fair. That, at the end of the day, we all need to work together, and we need to make you proud. The mission is not to embarrass our boss. It's never been to embarrass your boss, because you embarrass your boss, you embarrass yourself. We would break our backs, we would do what is required for us to do. There was another project around between 2010 2011 that just so much money was spent. It worked. It took up, it went up and went up, and it just went down. First of all, there weren't enough fixtures to accommodate all the stores, so that the implementation of these planograms and planoguides is done properly. Also, the stock issue when it comes to planograms and planoguides and planograms is that you're gonna then have to stick to that item. If you say this shelf is allocated for that item, that shelf must be for that item, nothing else. Now, we didn't have, the stock never really came, or it would take so long. You would sell the stock so fast that it takes so long to come back in store. What do? You can't have an empty shelf or empty gap in the thing. Either now you remove that pack, or you remove the tag that is supposed to have that specific item and replace it with whatever you have in the stockroom, because you need to sell the goods. At the end of the day, the point of being in a store, of running a store, is to make money. Presentation is important, but it's to make money. I cannot tell customers they can't buy things because I need to maintain the presentation. I need to keep maintain the standards. It's okay, ma'am. Mess up. I'll fix it later as long as you buy. Because that's why that's why I'm there, to make money. But so there was that thing that we do what we need to do, but the stock doesn't come. Or then they give us a list of all the stock that is supposed to be allocated for each bay, for each shelf, for each peg. We do it. Perfect. You send pictures. Week 1, week 2. Now you remove all the excess stock and stock that is not on your grid, that you're not supposed to be getting. But there has never been a proper channel of communication to say, take this, send it away. Go send it back to this store that is not on a planogram or in a plano guide. So there would always be, it would be always perfect for a good 3 months. And then after that, especially after back to school, again, back to school, people are busy, people are shopping. The school list, you how long is it going to take you to replenish a planogram? But you also need to create big statements to highlight the bulk stock that is waiting for you, that you need to sell. So that was the main challenge, but we didn't mind that, because we saw, because we did it, we saw how it looked. It looked perfect. And I mean, the stores that are doing it, for instance, Clicks. But the thing is, Clicks sells different things than what CNA used to sell. Unless even during back to school, the buyers and the planners stuck to the top 100 SKUs or the planogrammed stock, which would mean then you're limiting customers, right? So we didn't mind that activity. It didn't bother us, but it would be shocking at sometimes. It's like, what is it that we're not getting? Because it's not us. The stock that is in the stock room is stock that is not on the plano guide. So then the conclusion was, then the stock that is not on the guide, on the planogram, then you can put it on the ends, on the gondola ends, as end of range stock, which we did. But then it's not creating a good statement, and then they hate it, and it was just crazy. So we deal with our back to school, but while we're busy with back to school, so we get a recall list where we had to, some items were marked down, clearance, like CDs, music, DVDs, all of that. And some items had to be sent back to the suppliers. Some items, like cellular, I remember they told us to box all our cellular so that it can go to head office. From there, it was going to be checked and validated, because they had gotten a bulk buyer for those things. So we did that. It turned out that we were not going to continue selling tech due to the new owners. So we did that and went through festive season and back to school. In Feb, officially, we then get an invitation to attend a conference call, and then they just let us know what happened and what is the situation, and then to look out for Stockholm's that contained a generic 197 transfer letter, which was addressed to everyone, essentially, because there was no need to personalize. According to the letter, nothing was changing. It was just an official announcement and letting us know that was the situation. Cool. And then shortly after that, our GM then made an announcement that she will not be transferred. She will just be overseeing the transfers, but she will not continue with CNA. She will not cross over with us. Few people also left, but I mean, it wasn't a big deal where you would be looking out for red flags. It wasn't that situation. So now it's March. where we would normally wrap up the financial year. This is March, and it's the last month of the financial year. Usually it's quiet at this time, and we are in the process of doing our year-end checklist, and just to make sure that everything, especially now, it's critical because we are transferring to new owners. So it's important that we make sure all the accounts, all the necessary accounts over time, everything is captured. Fix our P&L. Any cost that unresolved costs that you were carrying over. Luckily for us, we didn't have any major thing. I think it was just one situation where we traded manually and we had our reference number and we sent off the information. But while we're busy with this checklist, it's March 2020. It's chaotic. So I know that there is something happening overseas, but I'm not grasping this. I don't have time to sit and actually engage and understand what's going on. So, and it's overseas, so I'm not paying attention. And up until that couple that came from Italy, and then whoever else, and then there was the numbers kept on growing, and then the president said something about lockdown, and it's not even funny. It's not a funny situation. I'm just thinking back that I was trying to unlock my brain. There's a lot of things that I think I have suppressed. I remember thinking, oh my God, lockdown. Oh, okay, maybe a week or two. So we're busy now with lockdown prep and financial year end prep. We send it off come the day, the final day of working. We send everything. We send our financial year end first so that the regional can have time to check and query whatever they want to query, and give head office time as well to look at the documents and check, so that we don't have to go back to store. And then the lockdown checklist as well. It's done and submitted. We'll go home. At this point, no one knows what's going to happen. So we all go home. And because unfortunately, all of us as store managers, we had no access to, we didn't use laptops. The only other means of communication was the WhatsApp group. And at that time, it was still okay because it was only necessary urgent stockcoms that needed our attention. Our WhatsApp group wasn't unnecessarily busy. And then we had our own regional group. So it's quiet, but then our regional keeps on updating us, and now they've met the new owners. But now, how fun meeting your new owners and your new bosses during lockdown, where you're supposed to be generating money and you're not, you're sitting at home. So anyway, so he gives us a brief moment that they are busy in meetings and they've met, the introduction has been done with the new owners. Week 3, the company, then there was the president made an announcement for essential stores to allow essential stores to sell, the clothing stores to sell certain items. Long sleeve, I can't remember the categories, but then they applied, CNA also applied for, I think it was 20 stores or less, for a permit to trade as an essential store, which they got. But in Cape Town, only 2 stores were trading during that period. That was Sitari and Hout Bay, and a few other stores in around the country. But in Cape Town, it was just Sitari and Hout Bay. And as our colleagues, we were worried for our colleagues, but as soon as they started trading, the first thing they reported was, guys, customers are looking for tech products. They're looking for cell phones, they're looking for cartridges, they're looking for laptops, anything, modems. They're looking for tech stuff that we previously last month excuse me, they're looking for tech items that the company sold at 75% off 2 months ago. And that was the first feedback. And I think by the third week, Houtbay was reporting that they are running out of board games, because that was another option for customers to keep the big kids busy. So Houtbay is running low on board games, puzzles, crafting stuff, toys. But then you must also consider the demographic of Houtbay and Setari is completely different to the most of the stores. But what didn't make sense was that while the stores were giving that feedback of customers, this is what customers are looking for, that was immediate. It was, I mean, in the second week of lockdown, no one from the new owners thought, oh, okay, the world is changing. We definitely didn't want this business to sell tech, but now it seems like that's what's going to happen, because we don't know how long this is going to take. We had experienced head, or an experienced head of buying, and the buyer of, a brilliant buyer of laptops and like all that stock. I'm sure they had strong relationships with our suppliers, regardless of the fact that Edcon had previously, in that second week as well, they announced that they're not going to make it. So they were in the process of applying for business rescue, but they were in that process. But even a cash transaction would have made a difference to say, okay, fine, we actually, hey, we know that we said we are closing the accounts, but this is what the customers are looking for. Can we buy for these stores? Like, even if it's just 5 stores per region, just to test the waters. But no one thought of that. And it was just, no, we exited that category. That was it. So I think this is now the third week of being at home. And every Sunday, when the president gives us an update, he just extends this lockdown situation. It's closer to month end. Edcon had paid us, just not our overtime. We never paid our lost overtime, actually. But Edcon had paid us for March. Now we are approaching month end April with the new owners. What we're not sure of now is what's going to happen to salaries, because these people, they just took over the business. We haven't generated a cent for them. They don't know the potential of the business. And it's going to be new for us that we will depend on cash transactions only, because now we're no longer going to be taking any accounts, all sorts of accounts. It's going to be strictly a cash business. How is this going to work? While we're thinking that, a change circular comes through, sent by our regional manager. It's about salaries. So we're still lucky to have jobs at this point. We're going to do salary cuts, and for a good 3 months for everyone, 20% salary cut across. So this went on, and the date change, the confirmation of the salaries, new pay day, were previously, Edcon paid us on the last day of the month, 31st or 30th, last day of the month. And so they said, the new owners said, CNA operations said the 25th, which is fine. So the 20% cut applied for 3 months initially, but it was also, there was a possibility of it being extended, because depending on the situation. Cool. At this point, obviously, no overtime, forget about bonuses. It was tough. It was a tough time. We understood that. we understood, but it was also still April for you to immediately go straight and say no bonuses. But then again, tough times, so we understood. Maybe it's not no bonuses forever, it's no bonuses just for this year. Cool, we get that, right? So we eventually get back. The lockdown levels got to a point where we could go trade under lockdown restrictions, and a new HR was appointed, and our scheduling person sent an email making it clear, no punch, no pay. We still remained under the 20% salary cut, and there was the TERS fund, TERS fund. Well, communication was that's one of the things that are blocked out, because the explanation and the communication regarding it was so vague. I didn't understand, and at some point I just blocked it out. I still don't understand what was the conclusion, because at some point during this salary cut situation, where we're realizing now that actually this 20% off, because now 20% cut is a lot, considering that you're not even earning overtime. The working hours haven't changed. One of the things is that the working hours didn't change. We were just working now, just working to a point where if you needed a day off, you had to justify why you needed a day. Remember, we are under lockdown. So while we're under lockdown, I was a P6, so there was a set, I think we had to work 195 hours a month, but my original contract, and in that 195 hours, Sundays was strictly not a working day. I mean, I was a 6-day worker. That's what I meant to say. I was a 6-day worker, 3 of us in that store. So Sunday was not a working day. Should you work a Sunday, it's double, right? That goes for public holidays as well. Now, the problem was that we were working under these lockdown restrictions. Luckily for us, ours wasn't affected that much, because we were working 9/6. It was a 9/6 mall, unlike the big stores that were working 9/9. So our hours were not affected that much, whereas the 9/9 stores, the 9/8 stores, their hours were affected, and they had more staff. So for them to come to tell us that you work your full contractual hours, therefore the big people working in the big stores will never reach first of all, they didn't reach their contractual hours, and it wasn't their fault. It was the fact that there was a curfew, so they were not reaching their contractual hours. But what about the people that were reaching their contractual hours, to a point where you had to justify that you need a day off now? You are entitled to a day off, and no one came up with a proper set rule in terms of working hours. We were just sent an email that said staff need to work 100% of their contractual hours, and we schedule as we've been scheduling for the past 3 years. No overtime for Sunday or public holidays unless full contractual hours were met. And this applied to all staff, and it didn't make sense. That did not make sense, because if you're paying me 20% less due to whatever, and you're not going to pay me overtime for being there on a Sunday or working on a public holiday, but you still expect me to work full contractual hours, when do I take a day off? And my Sunday, because remember the Sunday is overtime, so the Sunday that I'm there, you're not even booking it as time owing, because I need to work. It did not make sense. It really didn't make sense. Mind you, during this as well, even though it was a 197 transfer, but now we're working under a new company, new ownership, there was never even a letter that we signed that says an acknowledgement of your transfer, an acknowledgement of here's your letter of appointment back from us, and these are the new terms of work. There's nothing like that. They've never, and we asked so many times about new SOPs, about the appointment letters, new contracts. Yes, nothing changed, but we can't keep on referring to ADCON ways of doing things. I can't talk about a specific rule or whatever and quote ADCON's rules. I no longer work for ADCON. There was nothing, absolutely nothing that was given to us by this new company that we worked for pertaining to the rules of engagement. If you refer to the old ways of working, like they said, schedule your people like you've been doing for the past 3 years. The past 3 years, we didn't make people work more than for the past 3 years, we didn't make people work their Sundays and not pay them overtime. It's either they worked or they didn't. Or if they work, then we need to then accumulate time owing. It was that or like immediately and say, okay, fine, you can work Sunday, but we've exceeded our budget for overtime this month. Work Sunday, then immediately take your Monday off. Monday and Tuesday, or whatever the situation is. So anyway, it got frustrating, and there were FAQs, frequently asked questions, that were answered, but again, they were not satisfactory. But we, when you say, you know what, you just let it go. I think we all decided, you know what, let it go. And I think they used our originals to whisper in our ears, because obviously those are the people that we are used to. So whether they say, oh guys, please give them a chance, just come down, it's not a big deal, or maybe they direct you to see a bigger picture or something like that. So we just let it be, and we just continued working. But then each store had its own things, because I think we ended up figuring out that when we calculated hours, it's like, no, it's valid, that then we are owed time. So with ADCON selling the other brands also meant then that CNA could only use their systems for a certain period of time, up until maybe they conclude the sale of business, and which brought on so much pressure with CNA, because they looked for the service provider under pressure. There was not enough time to look for a service provider that would also make financial sense. Also in terms of transferring the stock file, because also I think that's where the issues came, because at a later stage we found out that a lot of SKUs were transferred that shouldn't have been. So there was not enough time to vet the data and validate the data that was being transferred to the new system, which would have meant a proper stock count on the old system and on the new system, to make sure that correct units, correct quantities, valid SKUs have been transferred. Stock that is actually in stores have been transferred. And so that really put so much pressure on the new owners. The lockdown on its own was just a headache, because you're paying rent, you're paying for everything, and you're not generating income. That was hell. And also just bad decision making. After we got back to stores, there was just decisions that were made, and it's like, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. And one of them, I would say that you had to go back to tech. You should have gone back to tech, selling tech. The business was changing. The world was changing, and it was the and it people were working from home. If there were just decisions that were made that didn't make sense in terms of spending money. Like we focused more on books and we neglected stationery. We focused more, actually, yeah, on books, and we neglected what customers were asking for, and we didn't take a chance where we believed in the brand enough to know that we're actually also leaders in the tech industry. We were also leaders, we're a trusted brand in the tech industry. We didn't They didn't take that chance, unfortunately. After that, not much changed, but we soon went into festive peak, and back to school prep. In between, we were asking questions. Obviously, there was a lot of things that didn't make sense for us as employees, that didn't sit well. There were a lot of questions that were left unanswered, but we still continued to go to work. But then the most the most common response would be, oh, stop being negative. Why are you being negative? Why are you being negative? You know what? You need to be grateful. There's a lot of people out there that don't have a job. Be grateful you have a job. Oh, stop complaining. All of that. Oh, on a good day, when we're not being negative or not grateful enough, then we'll tell, oh no, trust the process. Trust, big things are happening. Big things are happening in the background. Big things. You will see there's a lot that they're working on in the background. Give them a chance. That's what we were told, to give them a chance. And obviously, if it comes that comes from one of your leaders, you're gonna think that you were actually being just a negative Nancy, but you were actually asking valid questions. You just wanted to know the processes and the new ways of doing things. That's all we wanted. We never wanted to be negative Nancy's or whatever. We just needed clarity. It was only fair, like, to ask those questions that changed our lives, but we were we were being negative. We were being ungrateful. That's one of the things that's like, yo, what do you mean of being ungrateful? It sounds like you're saying that I'm sitting at home and just begging. I'm here and I'm showing up and I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. Anyway, none of our questions were ever answered. We were low in stock, but fully stocked on books, and new titles were coming in. Exciting, yeah, but our core business is stationery. Our core business is stationery. So someone that came for a book, a pen that is 50 rand, or someone that came for whatever item, type paper that I don't have, but as soon as you generate money, you're thinking of buying books. You're thinking of buying books. You're not buying for certain stores. You're buying for everyone across board. Everyone is getting that title. It's not selected stores. Everyone is getting that. Do you understand your customer? We went through festive season, a usual festive launch, where there would be an incentive. There was an incentive, I think, close to what Edcon used to give us, but it was an incentive nonetheless. And obviously we banked that, banked and got it, and as challenging as it was, festive and back to school 2020, back to school 2021, we still showed our potential. The stock, though, wasn't coming in as it was supposed to. We knew that the stock levels, because came October, where would you usually get our 80% of our stock for festive and back to school? There was nothing. And then when the stock eventually came, it's like, that would last a week in the store for back to school. So we knew already. So Christmas was good. January was good. up until, because you also know that January, 2 days before, those are your biggest days. 2 days before school opens, those are the biggest days of back to school. So already that day, everyone was on WhatsApp, guys, I need this, guys, I need this. Like, we're all in the same boat, which was sad because you couldn't even refer a customer to your closest branch, or ask your colleague to bring you those items. There was no way. There was no stock. So we finished January with empty shelves. Replenishment was coming, but it wasn't as fast, or it actually just wasn't even for back to school. It wasn't back to school volumes. So we started asking, it's Feb now, it's March, I still continue to ask questions, but you notice now there's a shift, and there's a slight, the tone is changing. There's the responses, they come with a little bit of, it's the abruptment when they answer questions now. It's you can, the silence is too loud, and you know that it's not our original left in March 2021. The turning you is like, nah, it's not business as usual. For him, it's not business for him to leave. This is a person who is 4 years away from his retirement. There's 4 years or 5 years away from his retirement. There was absolutely no way he would just up and go. That's when that was a sign. It's like, nah, it's not business as usual. And that was our Mr. Positive. No, the one that said, give them a chance. No, don't. That was him. He left. He didn't even think twice. Soon after that, his colleague also left. I think four months after that. So that was now our second regional that was in charge of us. He left, and then after that we were in between 4 line managers up until the end. But those are the people that actually stuck around until it all ended. But the 2 left not long after each other. So then, with overtime, they said they were busy working on a system that was being implemented to capture overtime. Obviously, we ended up crossing over to the new system, which was actually also another positive thing, because the service provider or the supplier that they chose, the system updated immediately. So if you sell something, it would update immediately, which means whenever replenishment is done by head office, it would, increase the chances of you getting the stock on time. And the courier at some point also changed, and that also in a way improved the turnaround time for replenishment if there was anything coming through. But at this point there wasn't much coming through. Business was slow, replenishment was slow. We still were busy giving our weekly or even daily suggestions and customer requests, and like, what is it that is required. On the other hand, we're busy with sales, and books that came 2 months ago, they go on a sale. There's like sales all over the store just to help bring in foot traffic and all of that. But it wasn't really making a huge impact. We were moving volumes, but it wasn't really money to bank and be proud of on your P&L. It was just to move units. After our regional left, there were few in between stores, unexpected stores that would close, but it also, we thought it was because maybe of the Edcon thing and the rent and downscaling, whatever. But it was also random stores that you'd never thought, because in prominent places, like Why would they close that store? But in 2021, more and more stores just suddenly were closing, and the timeline, would be given maybe 2 weeks notice, or even maybe less than 2 weeks notice, to say you're closing on this day, you need to be out on this day, which didn't make sense. It was confusing. During this time, there's also inconsistencies with our salaries, because the salary cut that we had that was followed by another one, which I can't even remember how long it lasted for, where but the second one was then only for managers, and the staff wasn't affected, but we were affected. But then they also tried to make it in a way that it doesn't affect us, we don't feel it right there and then, because we felt it at a later stage for sure, that they would pause the provident fund contribution and redirect that portion to our salaries, instead of taking away the 20% like they did before. So that also, and at this time it's like it's worse, because things have gotten worse, and we're still recovering from the previous cut, and there's no consistency. Even with salaries, they said the 25th, but then 2 or 3 months later the salary only comes 4 days late, with no prior explanation as to why. It got worse in 2021, 2022, 2021 mostly, where they would make it as if it's our banks. They say, no, the salaries was processed and whatever. It must be the bank. I'm like, but there's absolutely no way. If it was just one bank, that or one group of employees that was banking with a specific bank, that were reporting that the money is not in, it would make sense. But at this point, it's all of us. There's no way that you would process salaries and give a mandate, and all of them fail to process. There's absolutely no way. There's no way. Who is your banker? Like, who is your banker? Speak to your banker. Because at this point, we had gone back to banking with FNB. Initially, when the business took over, we were banking with ABSA. But after the main investor in early 2021, as soon as he pulled out, we went back to bank with FNB. So he pulled out and they sold his share. They pulled, that company pulled out, and they sold their ownership to the directors. And so we, shortly after that, we went back to banking with FNB. So as FNB to FNB, because I use FNB, so as FNB to FNB, there's absolutely no way that your bank would not process the mandate. But anyway, that was that. And so things got worse. Lack of communication, late salaries. At this point, we don't know what's going on. No one is communicating. It's silent. It's quiet. If we do ask a question, then it comes off. They were abrupt. If you get a response, if you are likely to get a response, and then maybe after 3 days of not getting paid, then a random email would come explaining, saying that, oh no, we will eventually, it's been processed now, it's been confirmed, it will reflect whenever. But I think that the longest, where they were forced to tell us exactly what was happening, is just after around September, October 2021. After the investor pulled out, Astoria pulled out, and they sold the shares. And then around there, not long after, Benjamin wanted to, in fact, he went ahead and he apparently or allegedly did a business rescue without informing the other directors. So they were not happy with that. They were not consulted. He did it on his own. And so I think they outvoted him or something like that. where he was then forced to resign. But there were two articles. One said he resigned, and one said no, he didn't resign. And it was not the matter of the business rescue situation. It was more of, you didn't consult us, you made an executive decision. He ended up leaving around April 2021. So we traded for a couple of months with all these big issues and low stock, no stock, all of that. A lot of clearance sales happening in store, and just inconsistency and not knowing exactly what's going on. And then it was announced that we were on business rescue with these people, and then there was a court case happening, and then all of a sudden this company that CNA Operations had borrowed money for back to school 2020, we owed those people a lot of money. That is why we were not getting paid on time. The terms of repayment were not being adhered to, or the interest, we were not paying back what was agreed to, because the business wasn't making money. And so only then we discovered, because I think end of September or end October was the longest month which we waited for our salaries, to a point where this company, Anglo Wealth Shaira, they allegedly took us, the company CNA, to court. Or that time the business rescue so there were business rescue practitioners that the previous director had appointed, but then it turned out that those people were not qualified to handle the size of the business. And then new business rescue practitioners were appointed. So in that period, everything had to go through them, the BRPs, before everything had to be approved by BRPs. So I don't know who was handling salaries in that period, whether the BRPs also had to go to Anglo Wealth Shaira to approve salaries, and that was a time where they did not, they refused. The case situation ended up in court. That is the first time where we actually got to hear the actual situation, the what was going on, where one of the directors, Rob, wrote us an email explaining exactly what was going on. It was like, oh, but now why didn't you guys say it? Like, and I understand for them, because they were also new. They came over with someone that just resigned. So it was hard for them. It was also like life-changing for them. As he said on the email, he did say that it was a life-changing and the lowest point of his career. I get that. But and now to be fighting with, justifying with someone that had also, because if you're gonna loan someone, you're sort of investing in their goal or in their dream. So now all of a sudden they were not even allowing them to pay us. So it was a bit embarrassing. I get that it was embarrassing for them, but it was 2021 that just was tough times. Tough times. We thought 2020 was, but 2021 was tough, because you saw a lot of people that you worked with for years and years lose their jobs, and during this period they are scrambling for money because the company is not forthcoming with the process. There are these people with years of service that didn't get what was prescribed under South African labor law. They didn't got nothing out of it, because it was business rescue, and they had to be wrapped up before a decision had to be made as to whether they qualified for severance. Eventually, when they got the severance, it was months later, and even then there were issues with it, and it was not even half of what they earned, like half of their salary, after waiting for that for so many months. And even then, between then and them getting their provident fund money, was just another hill they had to climb, because again, there was initially our provident fund was with a different fund, and then with the new company they did a different fund. So that transfer had not happened yet at all, not approved. All that process, by the time they got their money, they've had accrued so much bills, or lost so much, so much. They that the money they were getting didn't really have value. It was so sad to watch, and watching a brand that you worked for so long crumble. And at that point, that's where you realize that no matter how much you show up, customers all of a sudden, I don't know, if you know, when people can see that you are in trouble or you are struggling, and then they throw that back in your face. Because customers became so nasty all of a sudden. It's like every time, it's like someone that would be so understanding, and when you even try professionally to be, sorry ma'am, we've tried, we're not sure what's going on, and we know these are the people that are reading the newspapers, they know what's going on, but they're just they were throwing that on our faces, like, no wonder this shop, no wonder your shops are empty, or one, it's as if we were doing nothing. But ma'am, we are here, the shop is clean, the shelves are packed with everything, go to the stockroom. To a point, one day someone followed us, and then we had to take them to the stockroom to show them we're not being lazy. There's nothing in the stockroom. There's nothing in the stockroom. We're not being lazy. And to this point, we were down to less than 10 stores in Cape Town, where in 2021, yeah, less than 10 stores, where we used to be about 22 stores in the region. So yeah, that's it. That's the first part of my story, just 2020 and part of 2021. That's it. This wraps up part one of my CNA story, covering 2020 and half of 2021. Next time I will touch on the court case and the actual conclusion of the business rescue and what it meant for us, and the rest of 2022, which was the end for me. And the CCMA journey, I guess. But thank you for sticking around. Please don't forget to like and share. And I know that this is, for some people, to be quite triggering. It is for me as well, but it's almost 3 years now. I know it would be triggering because it really, 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 it's a brand that meant a lot to us, and the way things ended is not what anyone would have anticipated, and none of us ever thought that you would ever get the raw end of the deal, and that's what it is. And so I'm sharing it because it's my story, it's my experience, and I think I gave everyone involved an opportunity to just, do what they needed to do, and they didn't. So I'm just sharing my journey because I think my brain needs space. My brain needs space, so I need to empty the brain, and so I can have capacity. So thank you for watching. We will see you again at Retail Chats, and keep warm. And thank you. You can subscribe, you can like, and we'll see you next time. Today is 14th of May. So thank you from Nolu.